Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Coach's Corner. Today we got the whole gang here, obviously Bam, Tony, and Ramses. So today we're going to talk about Pac-Man. T's been doing incredibly well with the character. I personally have thought very highly of this character for quite some time, and I'm pretty sure everyone else has as well. I mean, it's it's a character that has results since the beginning of Ultimate, right? And even when we think back, I mean, in Smash 4 the character was really weak, but T also had like a little bit of results towards the very tail end of Smash 4. This was kind of like the era where like people weren't playing the game as much, so some people kind of write it off. But I still think that T did have technically results at the end of Smash 4 and was kind of showing off what the character could potentially do. But the character had like blaring weaknesses in Smash 4. Like I'm trying to think off the top of my head. The grab was really bad, like really, really bad in Smash 4. And then also when you Z dropped an item in Smash 4, it didn't keep its properties, which is a very big deal.
Mm-hmm.
So
Huge thing.
If you Z dropped Bell on a ledge trap, you weren't gonna get stunned. Yada yada. I think the key was the only one that kept its like strength or like quote unquote property when
You
you
had
Z dropped it.
Yeah, cool
yeah, you
because
had like
that's the item. Yeah.
Z drop footstool, Z drop footstool stuff.
Right,
But
right.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yep.
But I mean, since then the character has got completely revamped. Has like crazy combos in Smash Four. You couldn't do like fair strings and stuff like that. But essentially, just got upgraded across the board. Has a very good out of shield option as a zoner. Has even just like pretty good burst options, like even fair out of shield or just fair in general is a great combo tool. So it's like one of those characters I wouldn't straight up compare it to Rob because Rob gets so much more return in boxing scenarios. But like Pac-Man has good out of shield slash boxing options in a sense of just like singular hit. Like I said, not the same return as Rob, right? But you
Yeah.
kind of I feel like Pac-Man has a little bit of everything and or does like almost everything in more of an above average. And I don't know if I still have this opinion, but I've put Pac-Man in like my top 5 before just because I think the character is that strong. But like I said, I don't know if I still have Pac-Man in that top 5. Uh, but yeah, what are you guys' just general thoughts before we get into the nitty gritty about Pac-Man?
I mean, I would say, like, for me, I put Pac-Man probably like top 10, top 15. I always thought the character was really strong too. I mean, I do think, like you were talking about Rob, right? And I think that is a just comparison because it's like characters who, we talked about, everyone just saw them as zoners. I mean, now to this day, I think we've gotten to a point where people are like, oh yeah, these characters you shouldn't really be classified as these zoners like based on their capabilities. But it's because in Smash Four, right, we saw them as such, right? That was kind of their main thing, and the rest of their kits were substandard. And now it's to the point where they have the tools necessary, right? You talked about having like being out of shield, right, and having where you're pressuring, like you said the fair strings, like the grab combos that are happening, right? This character has like the big nair. That's like -3 on shield and all that shit, right? Like it's crazy, right? This character has a lot of these tools that it normally wouldn't have, and it was a paradigm shift for the character overall because a lot of times when you have these characters, right, especially if you think of them as owners, your whole idea, right, it just top line in any fighting game is like, oh, I want to get in, and then challenge this character, but like you're not going to be challenging this character there, right? Like up close, like there's going to be characters that have boxing tools better than him, obviously, but defensively, the character can really deal with it a lot. Like the character has the tools to deal with the pressure, right? And the way I would see it is like a lot of times in like traditional fighting games, when it comes down to it, a character like yeah, you could have good boxing tools, but what are the big things defensively? Like if you're someone who's trying to keep someone out when they come in, do you have a like invincible like DP, right? Do you have those kind of things? And essentially, Pac-Man can do that, right, and get away and move. And then it comes down to a game where I think just edge guarding and stuff is more important. It's something that even T talked about, after his like winning and things that he was focusing on. And it's like that thing, the character has a lot of capabilities there because of the entire toolkit, and now having the additional facet of being able to cover options like space that's already they cover space, right? Occupy space with the tools that you have, the item play and the zoning, and then it's like, oh, but now I actually have like I have fair, I have dare, and I have these things now, like these actual like boxing tools that can like push these people out again regardless. And so it's very interesting to see this character evolve in that way. And T was definitely someone who's been strong all along, and so it's great to see him get that character in his hands and make it happen. Because I don't know how if there were going to be many Pac-Man that were going to do it off rip. Because usually what happens with a lot of these characters, like they may potentially be good, but no one wants to play them or take the time to do so. And it's good that a veteran like T kept with the character, and now he's just reaping all the benefits because this character is really strong.
Pac-Man is a knowledge check. I think in this game, if you have a tool that punishes the opponents for being passive, in other words, like a charge move, like a Pac-Man fruit or a Samus charge shot or Monado arts or waft, like even Joker gun, because it's unreactable chip damage, right? If you have a tool like that, neutral is going to be a lot easier for you, because I think that dynamic of passively pressuring without overcommitting, it's one of the hardest skills to learn in any game, but especially in Smash, because it's so easy to be a little bit off on your estimations and overcommit, or to not commit hard enough and then put like no pressure on the board. So having a move like Fruit allowing you to pressure someone without that entire like precision aspect, so powerful. And then on top of that, it leads to two ridiculous items in both Galaga. I think it's Galaga, not the Galaxian. I think it's Galaga and the Bell. Galaga being kind of a neutral skip, honestly. There's counterplay that people are not using. Like I know Kome, who plays against T a lot, like will sometimes shield the Galaga and then do like a jump Z catch, and you would just like stop it from flying any further, stuff like that. But again, that's where we kind of like get back to the knowledge check part. And then Bell like Verzolian kills at 100 easily for a safe item, which is great. So I think naturally, like Pac-Man as a character, kind of similar to Steve, which I know is like an overdone comparison, but I think it is similar. The natural play patterns work to abuse a lot of common errors in players, both in, again, the pressure part, and then in the risk reward of items, the lack of item play on others, and then like knowledge checks on top of that. It's also hard to jank Pac-Man because you have the Hydrant, which also is its own like form of knowledge check, plus the recovery, which is also a huge knowledge check. And it all put together will make Pac-Man look like a good character for most players. I think that is what we're seeing with T right now, because Pac-Man is a character, like how will you ever learn the matchup well enough to tackle T? It's almost impossible. If you're not Japanese, of course. So that's my opinion of the character. I think like the character just like naturally lends itself to being very powerful against most players. And it's really only when people start playing specifically around those naturally strong tools that you see what the character can actually do. And that's also like, if you look at T does well in Japan, don't get me wrong, but like internationally, T always does much better.
That's true.
Yeah. And I think kind of like, especially in America, where like a lot of the characters that do well against Pac-Man, like Roy and Cloud, are a lot more common. You see, like that is where a lot of the struggle comes from, right? And that's where those characters don't need to play the matchup as precisely as like, I don't know, a Mario or even a R.O.B. So I think there's a lot, like Pac-Man is such a specific character, there's a lot of dynamics at play, which always makes it hard to accurately judge like how good is the character. And a lot of people are like, okay, I'll just look at results. And I struggle with Pac-Man, so Pac-Man is like super duper top tier. Whereas like I think Pac-Man is strong. I don't think he's all that. But I would be open to him being all that. Like I don't attach a lot of value to that opinion personally.
So from my perspective, whenever you are judging how good a character is in the present, you want to look at the results for the second or third best user of a given character, just because that takes niche circumstances out of, like, for example, Leo carrying Byleth the way he does. And if we could say, well, if he's not carrying Byleth, then we would see other Byleths winning these majors, and we don't even see other Byleths making top eights. So I think the same thing kind of applies to T's Pac-Man, where it's just him doing it. There's no one else. who is even making top 8, much less winning majors with the character. So I will also say it's a common sentiment that I see about T is that he plays his Kazuya very one-dimensionally and then plays very smart with Pac-Man. But from my perspective, I have a literal essay of his habits that he does every single time. And
He does the same thing with It's people don't understand what the nuance is.
Yeah, but the problem is that even if you like, it's not possible to win an RPS when someone picks rock every single time if you don't even recognize that it's an RPS in the first place.
Exactly.
So he, like, for example, the most common thing that I think is, I think it's fair to go ahead and say that T's Pac-Man is one of the top 10 threats on the planet in Ultimate.
I agree.
I'm not sure that you can actually argue against that at this point. There's the evidence is so strong against it. So
Yeah.
the difference, or one of the key things that sets him apart from every other top player, though, is that the refresh rate, or the points in which he recognizes what's going on in the game, are actually much less frequent than every other top 10 player. So everyone else, it's every 20 frames or so, and then they usually push that in a little bit closer past 20 frames. So after you input human reaction delay, input delay, et cetera, you usually are going to get to the tippy top from 2 to upwards of 3 point whatever decisions per second. T's not like that. He makes like 2 decisions per second tops. But his decisions are still usually correct because his opponents don't understand situations well enough to actually be able to properly feint to put out last moment changes in time. So, like, for example, as Ramses mentioned, Bell is super powerful, and people consistently misplay around Bell because they'll either act too soon and get hit, or too late and they just hold their shield there, and he'll literally just grab them on reaction to seeing them shielding. And when he throws the Bell is when he's making that reaction point, but they hold the shield through the Bell, and then they hold the shield for the next decision, because they're basically doubling down because they don't know how long they're supposed to hold shield, as an example. We saw that both Cosmos and Mute this past weekend. You can see them just getting paralyzed or absolutely giving him like 2 Bell distances away of space because they're trying to avoid it. And you'll see T just kind of wait out those scenarios, and he will just consistently outpatient people where he'll just say, listen, if you're not going to interact, I'm not going to interact, and I'm just going to run around, hold the Bell, and wait for you to just blink. And then he waits, they eventually blink, they roll in, they drop shield, swing at him, dash attack, whatever. And then they all of a sudden get belled and die at like 70, 80. And the character himself, like Pac-Man, is very limited in his ability to take stocks unless you fall for these very specific situations or gimmicks outright. And like, for example, one of the things that I also saw as a sentiment this past weekend is that his down toss with the Bell, his Z drops with the Bell, et cetera, at ledge with ledge trapping, that it has total coverage. But the problem is it shouldn't ever have total coverage. So whether it's him using it in conjunction with the Hydrant, where his opponents just straight up don't understand how the mechanics interact together, or if it's just something like him using Z drop a little bit to the right, whereas it wouldn't have hit his opponent if they had just held onto the ledge, but because he used it a little bit further to the left last time so that it was further off stage and it hit them for holding ledge, then they think, well, this time I have to get up attack through it, for example. And so he switches from one to the next, not especially just trying to read what they're going to do, just because he's mixing up his bell traps a little bit. And he does these mix-ups in a fairly set pattern. But the problem is there's so much to learn, so many patterns. Even if you know it is coming ahead of time, if you haven't specifically practiced these repetitions, if you haven't specifically practiced the reflexes that come, then you're not going to react to these things at time. Like I believe Bam mentioned that he has like a -3 nair, and that's fine. But the question is, well, how did he get in position for a -3 nair? Because Pac-Man has one of the floatiest jumps in the game. And
Absolutely.
so usually what you'll see, he has like a frame 29 short hop fastball, and what you'll see is usually Pac-Man will use a short hop aerial or a short hop bear, and then they'll nair with a landing. And then fair is also pretty safe, except if he uses a rising fair, there's usually like a 15 frame window where you can hit him before the nair comes out. Except people generally get stuck in shield because they're more focused on whatever fruit he has, or they're thinking about fire hydrant, and so they're distracted and they're not reacting quickly. They're not reacting fluidly, and these are situations they haven't practiced for. And that's ultimately what it comes down to. People outside of Japan don't really practice against Pac-Man, and that's probably not even a bad decision. Like, you shouldn't be practicing against Pac-Man if the only Pac-Man who exists isn't someone you can practice against. So, like, the odds of you running into exactly T in your bracket are not exactly high, no matter who you are. So there are obviously other top 10 players who are more rewarded for preparing for him. But outside of that, odds are T is not in your bracket. And so you are better off preparing for something like Aegis or Roy or Rob or et cetera, one of these more relevant, more common metagame characters.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the rough things, right? When you have someone, that character, like, dude, there's so much, like, to your point, Tony, and to, like, Ramses, like, there's such a knowledge check when it comes to this character, right? There's so many different patterns, and there's a couple characters in this game that are in that way, where you really need to understand how they play their game, and it can't be this general baseline of, like, oh, well, okay, these are some of their good options in boxing, this is when they're away, if they're zoning, this is how they recover, blah, 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 cool. You know, wrap it up, right? And then I'm going to be decently okay unless I'm playing, you know, then I can go more into the player nuances. But this character takes a lot of time, and it honestly is just not really worth it. And at the same time, like, a lot of these Pac-Mens they're coming up with some, like, new tricks, like, every now and then stuff as well too. Like, this character has enough to where it's not just a certain bag of tricks and then that's it, you know? There's a lot of things, a lot of nuance with the hydrant. There's a lot of times where, like, people just don't recognize, okay, how am I going to deal with Bell in this corner situation here, right? And so, because we're going to see that time and time again, like, it's funny because you'll just see T do this, like, he'll go through, he'll do, like, the same thing, and then when he finally changes it up, it's like, then they're lost in time again, right? And it takes everyone forever because, again, they still don't know what's really going on, and he gets such advantage out of that, just running people down and, like, being like, hey, pop quiz, like, he loves that stuff, dude, like, and he just jams people for it. And it's like, yeah, he totally plays his Kaguya the same way, which is why it's so funny to me when I see him go, because he runs up on people and he's like, yo, what up? Oh, you don't know what's going on, so I'm just doing this, right? And it looks like, and everyone's like, this doesn't make any sense. He's not even playing true Kazuya, and yet he's just running up on people. It's like, yeah, dude, because the fact of the matter is, like, a lot of you, like, people still haven't done enough, like, you haven't put in enough time and effort to really know what's going on with these characters. And he's someone who's, like, skilled enough to just run up on you if you don't.
And his characters both have, like, nuances that are very hard to know if you don't know. You know what I mean? Like, for Kazuya, like, you may know, like, you've seen the Vendetta clips, you just down till at his feet, bro, and then like T will mix it up in just, like, a very nuanced way and hit you and you die. And the same goes for Pac-Man, like Tony said, right? Does that drop over the ledge and just barely off the ledge? If you know that nuance leads to, like, the specific outcome difference that it does, then it is relatively easy to account for, because, again, Pac-Man's jump is pretty floaty. He doesn't have the best airspeed. In that sense, you can kind of react to his positioning and know just about where the bells drop in and act appropriately. But that is, like, it's a matter of, like, you know, inches, and if you don't know, you're not gonna do it. And I think that is, like, in that sense, like, T, like, here's the thing, I think that's a good thing, like, T abusing that, like, you do that until it stops working, of course. And like, so, like, the things we're saying about T, like refresh rate and linearity and blah blah, like, I don't think that's, like, negative at all. I'm not getting at T. We all agree T is a top 10 threat in the world, like we said. But it's an affront to his opponents who let him get away with doing the same shit. And in fact, if you look at a lot of the top players, they do something similar to T. It's just that their characters don't have that bag of tricks, so they have to adjust their plan a lot more quickly than T has to. And that's the difference. So like in that sense, like what T is doing is something that your favorite player is doing as well. It's just that T can do it for longer and can do it more in more nuanced ways than other players. The difference is, and that is something that I do agree with, is that T plays like less around the opponent than most of the other top level threats, which I think is, like again, a natural consequence of that fact that he doesn't need it. But it is something that I think is interesting because in the Steve episode, we talked about a similar thing. And I think Tony said this, where Steve tests a different set of skills than most characters, which is also why players like most, like, quote unquote, fundy top players cannot like just pick up a Steve and be like really successful. Mm-hmm. And I think in a lot of ways that also applies to Pac-Man, where like Pac-Man's like at the end of the day, if you break it down, it's Smash, right? Just like Steve, if you break it down, it's Smash. But due to the dynamics at play, it takes a while before you peel back the layers and actually get to the Smash part.
Yes.
And that's why I love seeing T play in Japan, because in Japan they're a lot better at getting to that Smash part.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think there are some players outside of Japan that have decent Pac-Man experience. I mean, there's Sinji, there's Kiwi, right? So especially in that tri-state area, or like New
Modzai
York.
in France, also really good
Right.
Pac-Man.
Like Light always talks about how he's very confident in the Pac-Man matchup because he like plays Kiwi a lot at locals and stuff, and he even does like he has his own bag of tricks versus Pac-Man where like he'll go on top of the Hydrant with Fox, he'll down smash it, both sides of down smash connect on the Hydrant. It'll put the Hydrant in tumble, and then since the Hydrant goes into tumble, Fox is lagless, right? So if Pac-Man's also by the Hydrant and gets hit by the down smash, he can then go into an instant nair, into a block string, or you're just de-arming the Hydrant instantly, right? So there are definitely players out there with the counterplay, and then obviously a lot of players in Japan know about all the intricacies of all the different tools that Pac-Man's flying at you. And I think one thing that T does particularly well, like when you compare T to like Sinji or Kiwi, I feel like T, one, just fundamentally is just a better player. But on top of that, like T does a really great job of not focal pointing on one asset of Pac-Man, and he keeps the pacing very fast, right? I think Sinji, for example, is a player that plays Pac-Man more on the slower side, right? And more on like, okay, you have to get to me more on like, let's test your offense versus my defense, right? Where T is a mix of everything, and it tries to be like really fast paced, not maybe super fast paced, like 2 to 3 decisions a second, but still like a very constant like 2 decisions a second, which is still extremely quick, like in terms of comparing it to everyone else in the Smash community, right? So that's like still very top level player status. So, and on top of that, like there's, I loved Ramses's point to where you're you're just overwhelmed. So like your decision making will slow down, right? Because you're trying to keep track of so many different things. And then on top of that, Pac-Man, like I think most players passively, when they're in a situation where they don't know something, they'll generally, especially the high to top level players, they'll be more on the passive side. That is like the go-to strategy if you don't know shit about a character, where it's like, oh well, fuck, I don't really know about this situation. Like I should probably just hold shield a little bit longer, or like just
That's
to
a
be
life
safe.
strategy, man.
Well,
Play
right,
it
because
safe.
it's the unknown, right? So you don't know
Right,
if like that was
yeah.
a true block string, and you're like, oh, maybe I'll just like, if they just spam spot dodge after, I'll punch the situation afterwards, right? Like I'm not gonna jump the gun and try to punch something I'm not like.
Yeah.
Maybe you do know, but maybe your muscle memory isn't like super on point in that particular situation. So they're gonna play, most high to top level players are gonna play more passively, and Pac-Man actually gets rewarded when you play more passively and give him more room, right? He's a character that, and on top of that, the return's not small either. The return off of you not knowing certain Pac-Man situations are drastically like shitty on your end, and it's really good for the Pac-Man player because you could die at 70 to like a half charge forward smash, right? Or you could
He likes
take
a little robbery, man. He
or you can
likes a little
take 80
robbery.
damage
Yeah.
from like a Galaga
To
combo.
Galaga, yeah.
Or
Mhm.
Or you die because it's like Galaga forward air and then the side B thing, you just like die at the top at like 60. It makes no sense.
or you don't know that like, oh hey, my back air puts Pac-Man Hydrant in the tumble for the first 2 to 3 back airs, but once it's sailed
Mm.
past 3, now it doesn't. Right? Like these are all like very brutal game losing knowledge checks that can happen to you because like you could back air the Hydrant and you're like, all right, cool, I'm gonna send it to him. And it was like, fuck, this thing is sailed like 3 or 4 times over, and it didn't.
I've definitely
Yeah.
lost
It
like that before.
right,
Or
and
the
then
short
like
hop, full
Pac-Man
hop difference too.
and short
The
hop,
short
full
hop,
hop
full hop
difference.
difference. Yeah.
Yeah, that's another one. And then Pac-Man, like on reaction, is standing next to the hydrant, and then like you're just lagging with your move, and then
And then forward smashes you.
just
Yeah.
forward smash or forward tilt on reaction just to like hit you with the hydrant, right? Because I mean, and that's a whole nother dynamic that we didn't really dive too much into. We talked a lot about bonus fruit and like the specific fruits and stuff like that. But even hydrant is like a crazy tool that Pac-Man has. I also think Pac-Man has one of the best recoveries in the game. You have a side B with like armor, right? That goes really far, and it's not invincible, but if you like just do it to the ledge, you're essentially like DDD up being to the ledge, right? Or you can force yourself really, really low, or you can stall yourself with hydrant. You can double jump, get the little boost with the fruit, and get almost a half charge off stage with fruit, and like little stuff like that. So I don't think by any means Pac-Man has the best recovery in the game, but I do think it's one
It's
of
up
the
there.
best. It's
Yeah.
for sure up
It's
there.
it's all. There's counterplay for individual things, but
If you don't
Good.
understand the counters to some of the more
Mhm.
obvious things, like if you start side being out, you can
Yep.
flip the pellet, for example. Most people don't try or even know to try. They
Yeah.
don't know that they're waiting to react to it, things like that. So T does actually regularly mix up his recoveries. And Pac-Man has a good recovery, even if you do know how it works. But he gets away with some. He gets away with some stuff just because people don't
Yeah.
know to react to
I
given
mean,
things.
it's a skull bash. It's a Pikachu skull bash. It's the same thing, right? Where like Pikachu doesn't need to be doing all that, but a lot of times they're just charging off and chilling because everyone's just gonna let it happen. So like that's what happens with the character all the time. Like people just go, oh wait, well this character has a good recovery, so I'm just not even gonna engage with that. I'm not gonna waste time losing my side, so I'm gonna be on the ledge, and then they come back for free, even if they're doing their recovery where they shouldn't.
Especially in a dynamic where you're already like dealing with a like uncomfortable situations in neutral. Even if you like rationally know what to do, it's like your muscle memory. You got to control those situations like deliberately. And that's like, oh yeah, I mean, I know the side B super armor stops halfway through, but like, do I have the intuition to know what halfway is just about? Because if you're too early, you get super armor, he hits you, it hurts. So like, you know, there's a lot of stage fight exactly. There's not a lot of room for error. And then the B, right? Like if he uses a second B, you can two frame that for free, but like good luck getting that timing if you don't play against Pac-Man regularly.
Or go for like the third trampoline. Like if you force Pac-Man to use like the third trampoline bounce, right? And also not knowing like, oh hey, I mean going for a spike 2 frame just for the damage, even though and like they could DI wrong
Yeah.
on hitting the the trampoline and stuff like that. But there's a bunch of neat stuff. Or even hitting the trampoline now makes the trampoline do a charge, right? That's another thing you can do.
If you want to be really flashy about it, if you know he has to do 2 ABs, you can air dodge past the first one, get hit in the trampoline, like jump up and then like air dodge back down and take the final one as well. So like if you know he has to do 2, he can be dead. Which, you know, like oftentimes you don't know because, you know, he side Bs and then he double jumps and then he often gets like single AB. But I have a local Pac-Man. I've taken stocks by just like air dodging through and then air dodging down and then just recovering back up.
Because your air dodge gets refreshed after the trampoline bounce.
After the jump, yeah, and then you can like directional air dodge back into it, and it jumps you back up. It's like, and that's like the kind of stuff you can only do that if you have like a read, good reactions, and a lot of balls. Because like you're in tournament, right? You fuck it up, you die. So that's another thing about like T that I think he does very well is like he abuses tournament pressure. I think better than like any other player.
I love it, dude.
Maybe
I love
not
it.
any other player, but it's definitely up there.
Yeah, it's definitely a big part of his play. Like I talked like Pac-Man's a little bit of a robber man as a character, and he knows he's
is.
in the alleyway. He knows he's in the alleyway, and I love it, dude. Like that, and he doesn't care. Like the way he runs up on people, right? And I mean, obviously, again, I know we're talking about Pac-Man and we're talking about T, but like, I think it's so funny. I always think back to see when I forgot the name of the tournament. Was it Battle of the BC that one happened recently? With and then T's Kazuya, he went up against the Wolf. Was that Summit? I'm like blanking out on names right now.
Ouch.
No,
Yeah, he went up against Ouch.
Yeah, that was Battle
Which
of
one
the
was the
Beat.
tournament that was? It was, right? Okay.
Yeah.
And it was just funny because, like, just for context, right? Riddle's Kazuya was like playing like by the book, you know, the way like Riddle's plays, you know, having the quality back, and then you know he loses the Ouch, and then straight up afterwards, T pulls out his Kazuya that has like half the combos that Riddle's has, but he just like double three stock, just robs him blind, right? And again, it's just the ability for T to recognize, like, yeah, maybe this situation is probably not the best for me, but you're scared anyways. Who cares? Like, I know you're afraid, so you're not moving. Like, because the right answer requires you to act, and you're not trying to act right now because you're afraid. You're not going to be running up, right? You're walking slowly, cautiously in the alleyway. So I'm just gonna run up behind you. I don't care. Like, give me your wallet. Like, he doesn't care. Like, it's so funny just to see him play, and it's like a very clear way that he looks at that kind of nuance, right? He's looking at the meta side of like, how afraid are you right now in this situation, right? And are you afraid enough to where this option, this counter option, is now off the board, so I can continue to apply pressure where I probably shouldn't be able to.
Yeah,
So,
even,
I
go
think-
ahead, Tony.
I think one of the very important distinctions in the Pac-Man matchup for most characters is that the pace that you are supposed to play the matchup changes depending on the position and other context of what's going on, like whether or not, or where and what hydrant is going on, how much damage it has on it. The hydrant itself has RPS situations behind it, like how you break it, what you're breaking it with. These are all meaningful decisions that you have to make, and most players don't even know. So I think, if I recall correctly, a lot of people were just straight up full hopping over the hydrant. And so the question is, can a top 10 player react to people full hopping? And the answer is yes, he can react to your full hop and anti-air. He is in fact one of the best players in the world. So yes, he can react to that. So and one of the things that distinguishes like the mid-level tournament level players from like the top level tournament players is whether or not you can react to those full hops, which is part of the reason why we don't see Pac-Man as much, because essentially he can beat you for having bad approaches. And so you need to recognize what hydrant situations you can do to break it and like what those patterns are, because you'll see he just straight up start charging a bonus fruit right next to the hydrant, knowing what you're going to break it with, like multiple seconds in advance, and he just ignores it. And you'll just see him charge through the hydrant and not even try and block it, because he knows what the angle you're going to swing it at. And so the problem is if he's not doing, or if he's not pressuring you because he's using that time to charge fruit instead, and then just basically putting his finger on the jump button to up air if he sees you full hop, then he's just a guile waiting to flash kick, whereas he's not doing anything to pressure you. So if you use like a weak aerial or something that's gonna pop it up so that it bounces slowly horizontally and just makes it bounce like a up tilts, things like that, what happens is you can just walk right behind the hydrant. And so sometimes what you'll see T do, though, is if you're going to do it the same way every single time, he just saw you do it. And so if you do the same thing, that's basically a gimmick if you're going to do the same thing every single time. And he's aware of it. So he'll just dash grab people and then use throw armor through the hydrant. And so their takeaway from that is, okay, so I shouldn't break the hydrant with up tilt. And it's like, no, that is not the solution. So if he punishes something when it was probably a very good mix-up, he'll condition people to just stop playing the matchup correctly by just punishing you for doing something obvious. And so if you were to take that same player, though, and show them a different thing where they just get back aired the same way 3 times in a row, and then they are super obvious about trying to parry it, they would say, well, of course I got punished. It was an obvious bait. So, but they just don't recognize that the distinction on the mix-up. And so T wins most matchups, I'd say, against most players on the planet from the moment he gets a Hydrant down. Like the matchup's just pretty much over. So, and it doesn't have to be that way. So, Hydrant is a symmetrical tool. You can take just as much of advantage of it as Pac-Man players can. It's just a matter of Pac-Man players are better educated than you on it, almost always. It's kind of like Diddy's banana, where if he just pulls it at you at a bad time and you can grab the banana, you are going to absolutely trample over the Diddies with it. That's why you see Diddy players usually pull it away or run away before so that they can keep control over it and control when it comes out, which the same thing applies to Pac-Man. The thing about T's Pac-Man, though, is he'll use it aggressively. So it's like if Diddy's ran up and started banana pulling in your face. Like it's something that Diddy players don't get away with, but people at T get away with it all the time. Because as Ramses mentioned, one of the many distinctions that's very similar to Steve is people don't play around Steve's anvil, but you can play around Hydrant the same way, where you just time or space an aerial so that you can clank with a Hydrant while you're juggling him. Because one of Pac-Man's greatest weaknesses is that his fastfall speed is terrible. So you can almost always frame trap him from below. He only has down air, which is a multi-hit that doesn't hit super far, so it loses most trades. He is very weak to juggles, except he just gets carried by whether you can pass the knowledge check of, I know how to juggle Pac-Man through Hydrant. And if you don't, then you are cutting out one of the core weaknesses of a character that has strengths pretty much everywhere else. So, like Charles mentioned earlier, Hydrant is a very big thing, very big deal. But like even using the light example, if light just keeps down smashing, every single time he sees light above Hydrant, he's just going to immediately read the down smash, and so he can just walk up, parry the down smash, and then help parry the nair too. Because even though it's normally a difficult thing to execute, if T knows exactly what light's going to do every single time, then he is a skilled enough player, he can hit these obvious things. And so usually what you see is you'll see T just be a very good player with screenshots. And so what I mean by screenshots is we mentioned before about how the rate that he plays around people. I believe Ramses specifically alluded to what a powerful proactive player T is. So he essentially asks you questions, and if you don't know the answer to those questions, you lose. And so he is, I would say that of every player on the planet that asks people questions of, do you know how to beat this thing that my character has, he has the most of those questions of anyone.
He's the pop quiz master. 100%.
Akala is getting there. Akala is getting there.
He's getting there. Yeah.
He's really one of them too. Yeah. And the character allows for that as well.
So what the difference here between T is that if you show another top player a screenshot of a position that T is putting someone in, they will not know the answer to it, even if you give them time to think about it. For everyone else, if you show them a screenshot against, let's say, Gluto or Leo or Spargo, one of these players, if you show them a screenshot and say, what is the correct answer here? Even mid-level players can give you the answers. It's a matter of whether or not you can snap off the quizzes like that. And versus T, just nobody knows what they're doing. And so you need to actually take the time to learn the Hydrant. And then also when you do get the Hydrant hits and you get T on the ledge or in the air or whatever, you need to be able to avoid the pressure to think, if I let T get another Hydrant out, I'm going to lose this game. Because the problem is like you saw, especially like with both Mute and Cosmos, is they would get T into a disadvantageous position, but then they would commit too much to their own advantage. So when they'd have T in the corner, it was almost guaranteed that they were going to go for something like a dash attack, dash grab to put him off, because they didn't want him charging bonus fruit. Because as Ramses mentioned, it's hard to get the balance of your passivity and also your own proactivity, trying to get things going for yourself. That if you are overcommitting, you'll just usually see T just sit there and hold shield and wait for somebody to do something silly into his shield so that he can just nair out a shield or whatever. And Pac-Man has a very good out of shield game, like Bam mentioned. He has both I think it's a frame 3 nair.
It's a frame 3.
And his up B is also very fast. I can't remember what frame that is, but that's also very fast. So he just has a lot of panic options that he can do to just get out of a lot of these pressure situations. And usually the answer there is like if you see Spargo using his plowed back airs where he'll just threaten to interact with you, but he's not actually trying to fight you at the corner most of the time. He's just trying to slow choke you. He's trying to cut you off from being able to escape that position. And even if you do, you're not going to get a chance to hit him. People don't treat T's Pac-Man that way. They try to force that ledge trap to be the ledge trap that, and when they do go for edge guards, they're like, this is the edge guard. I'm not going to use retreating areas here. Like it's got to happen.
I think a lot of that's frustration. It's like, how do I even get the first hit? Then they do get a hit, and it's like, because I'm not confident in how I'm going to get my follow-up hit, this needs to count. Which leads to people over, and you can see that in, for example, Min Min as well. When you see people play against Min Min, they put her off stage, they will go all the way. Whereas, you know, what you want to do against Min Min is usually when you win neutral, you put her off stage, she probably has enough mix-ups to make it back. Then you put her in the corner, you hit her out of the corner off stage, then you commit, right? But it's hard to be disciplined enough to add that extra step if you're not confident in your neutral interactions. And I think Pac-Man's neutral, like it's annoying, but there's also like there's plenty of gaps for any type of character to make their way in if you play around the charge level properly, right? Because like the first few charges don't really matter. It's when they get to like Galaga pudding, or sorry, Bell and Key, when the charge actually becomes threatening. But it's a lot, right? Because you work through the hydrant, you work through the charge. If you're wrong, he gets another hydrant, he gets a little bit more charge, and it's like it's a lot of being wrong, but you got to be wrong in a way that doesn't get you punished. And I think that is where a lot of players struggle against T, where because they feel like they cannot be wrong safely, they commit harder, and that's when you get what Tony said. That's my observation, at least.
They get in that pressure feedback loop.
Yeah.
Where the more stress they get, the more they stress when they shouldn't be stressing, and then they're stressing there, so they're more stressed at back. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and that's a very interesting like nuance, right? Like even just like people in general, where it's like you are in a situation, and a lot of times, like we talked about, like going back to kind of like the alleyway analogy, right? Where it's like you're gonna be like, you know, people are scared, they play cautious, right? They're gonna be passive, and then it's like usually what happens if I'm gonna bust out of that and like act, then it's like, damn, I got to do something, right? So then you're just like, I'm just gonna do it, and so you don't recognize where it's like you can. There's a fine line, a very fine line to what you guys were saying, where you're able to still interact and do something, but do it in a way where it's like you're still mitigating the risk, right? And it's like, but you're still like being assertive versus completely climbing up. A lot of times when people feel like they're climbing up too much and they want to get out of that circumstance, they feel like they just got to do something, right? And he waits for those things time and time again. He's so good at reading those nuances. And I think that even though like that, obviously that's credit to T as a player, right? But that's just also a very big thing where I feel like Pac-Man does test people at, right? And because the character has a lot of resources, a lot of nuance, it allows him to do this over and over again. And I do think that is a value of a character, right? Ultimately, too, right? There's certain characters that have all these different mini games, right? They're the mini game master, and they're just throwing welcome to the circus, and they're throwing this one and that one there, right? And over time, that just gets mentally taxing. Even if you do study, even if you do practice against these characters. And the problem is he's lived in it, right? Like, you know, that's what it is, right? Like, he was born in it. So, like, it's very, very hard to deal with that kind of game plan, especially when the character now has less glaring weaknesses. I will say, though, I know Tony was talking about, I know Ram's talking about as well. It's like, I am very, 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 very tired of seeing Pac-Mens landing for free because they can just go and put Hydrant down. And like it's especially in a game where we have so many sorties, like it's wild that like, dude, just like you just need to do your general move that you should be doing anyways, and just do it a little bit earlier, and you're good. Like, don't let this guy just go and do this for free. I think that's one of the biggest things that people can do immediately right now to be like better against the character. But again, to the other things, I think there's a lot more nuance for sure.
Yeah,
is it Pac-Mens or is it Pac-Men?
I don't know.
Why not both?
I don't know what the.
Why not both? Bam said
Pac-Man.
Pac-Mens, and I was like, wow,
Pac-Mans,
Pac-Mans.
man. The
Is
Pac-Mans,
this your
dude.
Pac-Mans?
Collect
The
your
Pac-Mans.
Pac-Mans, dude.
Collect the Pac-Mans, dude.
But yeah, there's just so much on the mental stack because even I mean we're talking about unique tools, right? And I know we touched on bonus fruit, but there's even like T does a crazy job of like even he'll like full hop charge and it's like you don't know like the apple's about to come up, right? Because it goes melon to apple, I believe, or is it the other way around? I can't remember the exact order, but like you don't see Apple and you're like, oh, I can get under him and shark him, right? And then like as you run in, he like it just switches to Apple, but you don't even visually see it, and he's already launching it and stuff like that. Like T is very good at doing stuff like that because even from Galaga to Bell, uh, you can have the item in your hand and then put it back to charging. So if he recaught the Galaga, he can like fade back, start to charge, and then if he reacts to you running in, and then it just switched to Bell, then he throws the Bell. But you're trying to play around Galaga, right? Like there's so is there a Hydrant out while this is going on, right? There's so much on the mental stack for the player, like for both, right? But again, the Pac-Mans are going to be more educated in that sense, right?
Hold on. We gotta solve this right now. Is it
Oh,
Pac-Mans or
It's
Pac-Man?
Pac-Man. It's
But
Pac-Man.
why is it Pac-Man when their name? Because it's named Mr. Pac-Man, right?
Yeah, but his race is Pac-Man. There are multiple Pac-Man.
Right, but then there's the
Are
name
there?
as well.
Well,
That's what I'm
if you
saying.
die in the game, you get another Pac-Man, right? So there have to be multiple Pac-Man.
are
Do
they
they?
all
Or
Mister?
because I mean, same thing with Mario. When he dies, he come back as well. So what's that?
That-
Is it clone? Oh, no, I don't say that. So I was like,
You're getting too close to the truth, Bam. You're getting too
into
close to
the
the
lore.
truth.
I'm tired
I don't
with
think
it.
Yeah,
you
someone's
don't
gonna
want
take
to
you
dig
out.
any deeper.
Yeah, someone's gonna take you out, bro. It's Pac-Man, and that's just how it is.
This is. I think we're gonna
That's
pass
so
this one
funny.
off to Tweak Talks. We're gonna pass this one off to Tweak Talks. You
Goodbye.
guys figure it out.
You guys
Charles.
figure it out, dude.
Yeah, what's the canon?
This
The
man is
canon
Pac-Mans.
for
Pack race,
What is the truth?
the Pack Masters.
yeah.
Yes.
Ooh, I like that. I like that.
I like that.
But yeah, there's just so much going on in the mental stack, and and on top of that, T just has so many different types of tricks too, right? I do want to talk about what's your guys' opinion on Pac-Man in the current meta because I do think he's fallen off a little bit. I think in terms of the farther back you go in time, Pac-Man is probably stronger in the meta game just because of I think we all can agree that the power creep of Fighter Pass 2 is something else, right? So I do think characters, any sword character can do really well against Pac-Man, and we've gotten, one, players have gotten better at sword characters. Two, there's a lot of players that are very strong in the current top 5 or top 10 of the player base that play sword characters. And on top of that, we have like a new sword character in Fighter Pass 2 being like Min Min, and then we have Sephiroth too. But like in terms of current meta,
And Sora.
and Sora. Actually, okay,
Kamene, you know?
there's a good amount. Yeah, I mean, so it's like
Aegis.
yeah, Aegis. I mean, geez, Christ, all of them.
It's all sword fighters.
Steve's
It's-
got a sword too. That
Steve-
forward smash is
Steve-
crazy.
He definitely got a sword.
That I've seen
He
that sword
definitely
kill
got a
people
sword.
at 50%. But
Dude,
yeah, so I mean,
for real.
even just more sword characters entering the fray, and then on top of that, I feel like Pac-Man. It's hard for Pac-Man to get their strategy going because against sword characters at least because the sword characters can play the proactive gameplay and usually Pac-Man gets something for being proactive, right? Like he gets some kind of benefit, like he gets some kind of charge, or like maybe you hit the hydrant first and then he gets to hydrant RPS you or yada yada yada, right? But with sword characters, like Cloud can back air the hydrant and not care, even if he doesn't break it, and I don't like. I'm pretty sure Cloud's back air breaks it almost every single time, unless it's like super stale on a short hop. But for the most part, Cloud's aerials are going to demolish the hydrant, right? Like these are sword characters we're talking about. Their aerials usually have long range. They hit very hard, which is really what you want versus Pac-Man because you instantly disarm the hydrant. Now the hydrant's either tumbling in some kind of way, but it's your hitbox, right? And then from there, you can kind of be like, now your Hydrant's on cooldown. I'm gonna slowly bring this like wall of hitboxes towards you, and I outrange you, right? And I don't have to care about your out of shield being so good because I'm not next to you anyway, right? And then on top of that, it's like, oh, I don't need a. I feel like most sword characters, they don't need to feel pressure to go off stage because their corner situation is so strong that it's like, and another like kind of turny benefit of playing sword characters, like usually your strategies are pretty simple, right? For the most part. I mean, especially when you look at a character like Cloud, where it's like, okay, like I'm spacing you out in neutral, and then my advantage state is essentially the same thing, but you can't run away, right? So it's like very simple, very effective. So I think that's a big reason why T has picked up Kazuya, just to have that curveball. I don't know if Kazuya is necessarily like strong against sword characters, right? You're still getting zoned out in a sense, but I just feel like when you put Pac-Man in a position where you shut down the proactive play and Pac-Man barely gets anything off the proactive play, then Pac-Man has to be like more offensive, right? And Pac-Man's return isn't something like R.O.B. R.O.B, when he goes in, he gets a hit, he can zero to death you. Pac-Man is not like that, and
It depends on his charge. It depends on his
it
charge,
depends on
right?
the charge. Yeah, right, right. Really, really
Mm.
big deal. But like Galaga in certain situations get you 0 to 80, and then like the classic, what makes Pac-Man bullshit in certain situations, it's like, oh, Galaga gets like the 50 to 80%, and then the next charge is the bell, which if connected correctly and the right charge of a smash attack, you're dead. So you can essentially die to two neutral interactions potentially, right? With the right items. But again, I just feel like a sword character, you can you can play around those situations a lot safer than a lot of the other casts. And again, that thing we were talking about in the beginning where it's like, oh yeah, most players, the go-to strategy is play passive, and Pac-Man usually kind of punishes that. Sword characters still have to be a little bit more aggressive and still need to understand the nuances, but like they can still kind of play more so on the back foot and still put the pressure on Pac-Man to the point where it's like, okay, well you got to get some kind of opening here, right? And that's where I think Pac-Man can kind of fall off in the meta. I just feel like sword characters do so well versus Pac-Man, and then like there's like the classic counter picks, which is why again, even when I look back in the past metas, when Pac-Man real worst enemy back in the day was like Wolf. I don't even think that matchup's that bad. I think Wolf still wins overall, but it's like I think before we used to think it was like 6-4 in Wolf's favor, right? Like year one, year two of Ultimate. I mean,
Is
that's
that
what I
great?
thought. Yeah, I mean that's what I thought. But like as I watched T play more Wolves, I was kind of like, okay, this is like in favor of Wolf, but not. It's like a +1. You know
It's
what I
not
mean?
that bad. It's
It's
really
it's
not
it's
that bad.
really
Yeah.
not that bad. But then I see like Pac-Man Cloud, and it's like Pac-Man versus
That's
some of these
horrible.
right Pac-Man
Yeah.
versus some of these sword characters. I'm like, okay, Wolf is like
Yeah.
okay, whatever, right? Like these sword characters
This, they're right. Yeah, nah.
dismantle Pac-Man because at least like with Wolf, it's like you can blast through the hydrant like 2 times to put in tumbles 3 if it's really stale and stuff. But like Wolf doesn't decimate the hydrant and pressure Pac-Man like really really quick. So at least Pac-Man gets a lot of charges off, right? But man, some of these sword characters just mess Pac-Man up, and I do really think that's a big reason why T has opted to added Kazuya into his character pool.
Well, the thing about sword characters is that like the actual players of the sword characters are very mixed on how they feel about the matchup. Like
Really? Okay.
I know, like Cola decided to basically drop Roy in the matchup and just straight up switch to Cloud for it because he didn't like it because both Crom and Roy just get janked out so hard by Pac-Man. Like if you get caught by a gimmick, you can die pretty much at 0. So
Yeah.
like the risk reward on that, just getting like a hydrant push on your up B is Crom, or if you like Pac-Man's fair is one of the best carry tools or carry combo tools in the game. So like if he fairs you and you jump at the wrong time, you're also dead at 0. Like he can kill you off a grab at 0 if he gets a hard read on one of your jumps, stuff like that. And then like after that point, Goblin since then his 3-stocked him multiple times. I'm sure we all remember at Summit, which was like T's worst placement when he ran into Goblin in that tournament. And the thing about that though is that we want to talk about Fighters Pass 2 and how it pushes down Pac-Man, but that's where T's Kazuya comes in clutch because Kazuya, I believe, has like Kazuya and Steve, I believe, have the best matchups versus sword characters in tournaments, their performance. So I don't think Kazuya objectively beats swords. However, in practice, it has turned out to be that it seems like Kazuya is one of swords worst matchups, which we obviously see in Vendetta and Jazzo down in, or less so Jazzo, but more Vendetta down in the southeast. We see Riddles taking out Cola and Goblin on a regular basis, things like that. And then T's Kazuya definitely has a winning record versus the swords that I remember him using. And I don't think it's a coincidence we saw Alejo switch off of Aegis against his Kazuya for it. So the one of the things that I think really contributes to it, though, is that both characters have points where they can blow each other up. So it's one of those even-ish matchups, but if one of the players doesn't know the matchup, which it's almost always going to be the Pac-Man who does know the matchup if it's anybody, then the other player gets blown up. So I think that's one of those types of situations. Something else worth noting is that how low the hurt boxes for the sword character goes and how disjointed their sword is are very important. For example, the Roy and Crom crouches are not particularly high, but for Cloud, you already mentioned Cloud Fair. There's multiple hitboxes and angles you can use off of that Fair. And then even if it doesn't break it because he uses a sour spot, usually there's different angles that Cloud can follow it up with so that Pac-Man can't just react to it. If Pac-Man does try and break the hydrant, then Cloud can just down tilt under it, things like that. So he has a lot of counterplay that Pac-Man usually see Pac-Man using against other people, whereas Cloud has that same stuff. Ike and Shulk, for example, have very big long swords, so they can swing in a way to hit Hydrant while being ready to follow up off of Hydrant, while still being far enough back that even if Pac-Man does something like forward smash the Hydrant, unless they're hard drifting into it, they can just kill the Hydrant, protect themselves if it is broken by clanking with it, all without ever giving Pac-Man a chance to hit them. So it turns off a lot of the Hydrant neutral interactions when you play these longsword characters. I know, if I remember correctly, Ramses, you actually almost beat T with Shulk, is that correct?
No, I didn't get to play T. I almost beat Siski, and Siski destroyed T. But
I was thinking of Modzai. I was thinking of.
Oh yeah. I played against Modzai a bit, and the matchup always feels good for Shulk. Like you said, the range is used against the Hydrant. Shulk also runs through the Hydrant in speed art. He goes so fast that he can just go through the Hydrant, which is funny. It is really funny. If he charges, I just go through it. I just grab him. Shield art gets out of the stun, and then you jump art and he cannot side B, so then he has to up B, and then you just hit him. But I think Shulk Shulk doesn't really fall within this sword archetype in a traditional sense in a lot of ways because of what you've outlined. For example, the same is true against Kazuya, right? I think Kazuya does well against swords generally, but then Shulk has arts, so it's different. But I think my main take on Pac-Man, which is I think a bit weird, but I can explain. I think the better people get against Steve, the better they're going to get against Pac-Man. And that's not because they're super similar, but I think a lot of the dynamics that you need to learn to beat Steve, you also need against Pac-Man. Like, for example, how do you deal with a hazard while approaching, right? And a lot of the RPS around Hydrant is super similar to the RPS around destroying blocks. And how do you deal with Pac-Man's out of shield? Well, Pac-Man fair out of shield is literally like Steve's rising neutral air out of shield. It's almost the same thing. How do you pressure someone passively charging to get stronger, right? Where it's fruit on the one hand and then mining on the other hand. How do you mentally prepare for your advantage state scenarios when your neutral is so hard fought? Kind of like what we talked about before, right? Where people overcommit in ledge traps because they don't feel confident in the neutral. And then there's, of course, there's a lot of differences, the Bell and the Galaga and, Pac-Man dash attack is a whole other beast. And then, there's differences between Hydrant and blocks. But I think the skill set is very similar. So I think in that sense, meta-wise, like Charles mentioned, the character is gonna just, the character's weaker because of power creep, because of a lot more sword characters who do well against Pac-Man. But I also think the player base is gonna get better at the dynamics needed to fight Pac-Man through improving against Steve, which I think is also gonna make the character weaker. Even though I will say, like, if you play against someone like T, knowing the dynamics is obviously not going to be enough. You got to be strong enough to, like, know the bag of tricks and knowledgeable to be able to counterplay it consistently. But I do think that is a big part of the meta going forward. It's just like, how do you fight Steve, right? And a lot of that kind of like applies to Pac-Man in a lot of ways.
And Steve is way more popular of a character too, so it's not going to be
Yeah.
like this dilemma of like, oh dang, there's like 5 Pac-Man players on planet Earth that play tournaments.
Why
right?
bother learning the matchup? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like there's got at this point there's got to be a Steve in every region, or maybe even
Mhm.
multiple. And even Onan at Big House, he was actually making 2 stack walls. Not even because like usually we see like 3 high, right? Like 1 thick and then 3 high walls from Steve. But Onan, yeah, they were just making like 1 2, boom, that's it. And that's about the size of what? Hydrant.
Hydrant.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just enough to get you to full hop instead of short hop over. And I don't know if Onan does it for like specific matchups, or it's like, oh, this character's like short hop is like this high, so I do it this, whatever. I don't know if Onan is thinking that far ahead, right? But
It's just
yeah,
funny.
at
Just
Big
funny.
House, Onan was doing
Yeah.
2 stack walls in a lot of matchups. So, and I mean, Onan got third at that tournament, so definitely doing well with the character. So yeah, that parallel is very interesting. And the hard thing about Steve is that like with Hydrant, it's 14%, right? If I'm not mistaken, it's around there, like 13,
Around that mark.
13
Yeah.
or it's
13
between the 13 and 14,
ish.
something like that. But with
They
block,
look it up.
it gets super tricky because the health values change depending on what material the Steve used, right? And like,
Yep.
what stage are you on? Do you get more coal
And the
or metal?
degradation
Yeah.
of it as well. Like it loses HP over time, right? So that's another factor as well.
Yep. So
The wall.
it's weird, but there's a lot of creative stuff you can do with that. I know for the most part, like Steve players or Pac-Man players are going to know how to abuse that more. But I mean, just the example of the Fox down smash on the Hydrant, you can like do edge cancels on these things, right? Like you could monkey flip, like edge cancel off of like the edge of it, and then like be able to come down on the Steve with like a nair or something like that, right? Like there's a bunch of things you can do, and I've even seen like Twitter clips of players like doing combos off of a like Steve stack wall where it's
Block.
right
Yeah.
because like they do a move, and since the dirt block has so much and if you're on top of the block, the health burns faster, right? So you do a move,
Mm-hmm.
and then the dirt block breaks, and then you're like in the air, so you can do like falling up air right after like an up tilt or something like that, or some kind of
Yeah.
grounded
Type.
move, right? And like so that's like super cool as well. So there's especially with the addition to Steve, there's so much more to learn about this game, and in terms of just like what you can do off of certain things, like off of the hydrant, off of the block, right? So all these like really weird characters that bring like terrain onto the table. And if I'm not mistaken, is Pac-Man the first character that was like able to spawn a piece of terrain into the game? Because that's what hydrant is. You can stand on it, right?
Yeah, it's a hazard. It's a hazard. Yeah, I think he is, but I'm not 100%.
Nah, man. What are you talking about, bro?
Fake
Spring, baby.
grenades.
Spring, baby.
Oh yeah, spring.
Sonic Spring.
Sonic grounded spring.
Don't ever forget the
True.
OG.
Grounded string. That's true.
What a hazard.
the goat.
Now, I will say that the dynamic and the ultimate goal, if you were to paraphrase the mini game of block versus hydrant, is versus block. You generally don't want to be the person to break the blocks. You want to beat your opponent into basically thinking that they're counter hitting you, so they'll break the blocks and then you can counter hit them. So it's like hot potato, where you don't want to get caught holding the potato. Hydrant is the other way around, where you want to be the person last touching the hydrant.
So you get the
And
hitbox.
then Yeah, exactly. And then
That's
if you
it.
think your opponent's going to try and counter hit your counter hit so that they can break it, then you bait them in swing first, and then you hit it, and then whoever wins basically just gets a Marvel assist for the next couple
Yeah.
seconds. So
You're
Oh, you
playing
know the
some
first
games, man.
hazards? The first hazards, I'm just interrupting. Melee Sheik needles. She could throw them on the ground and they would stay active. And if you hit them, it gives you hit lag. So she could like needle trap the ground and then your aerials would suck ass. So Sheik in
Throw off your
Melee at the
LPS.
first
Damn, I did
hazards.
not know
The
that.
first
That's
hazard.
crazy. I did not
It's
know like
cool.
on
It's
the ground it
I didn't
like
know it gave you hit lag. Yeah, it went on the
that's
ground.
Yeah.
That's so
wild.
funny.
J-Mook used it, and then Mewtwo King was like, "I did this 10 years ago," and everyone was like, "I know, Jason, you did this. You did this first. You are the kid."
Yep, you did it all.
I love
You
Jason.
are Super Smash Brothers Melee for the game.
The king and the muse.
Yep, definitely the king of the muse.
So that's the first hazard. Is Sheik Needles. Let's go.
Damn, that's crazy. I guess did you guys have any final thoughts about Pac-Man around the horn? I know we kind of went from past, even not talking about where Pac-Man kind of stays in the current meta, or even some of the characters. You can kind of compare Pac-Man to in terms of like the skill set you need. But I guess a final around the horn on your thoughts of Pac-Man in the current meta. I can start. So for me, like I said, I used to think very highly of the character.
Yeah.
Like I would say about a year ago, I put him in my top 5. I still kind of hold him at that regard, but like he's kind of falling off for me just because of Fighter Pass 2. I don't know where to put him at in terms of Fighter Pass 2 because I just feel like Fighter Pass 2 is very powerful against Pac-Man, and even like it was so nice too when you played Pac-Man because you had a bunch of there was these other matchups that were just very hard for the other player, right? Like Sheik or
Pichu.
Diddy, Pichu, right? Like there's these characters that if you couldn't break the hydrant once, like these quick nimble combo characters, right? And I I wouldn't say that quick nimble combo characters are quite falling. I guess they kind of are falling out of flavor, but I mean, we're seeing the meta more kind of go towards sword characters, right? Like in general, like how many sword characters are there in top eights? There's quite a lot. So I think where the current meta is going, it's not favorable towards Pac-Man. Whereas like pre-quarantine or like before Fighter Pass 2, Pac-Man was drastically stronger. So I probably now put Pac-Man in like that top, like where Bam says, like top 10, top 15 in terms of like the current meta. And I do think for T, Pac-Man's still a very powerful tool. Even though, like on paper, the meta doesn't really call for Pac-Man, but T's Pac-Man is so far and above. Like in terms of like T compared to the second best Pac-Man in the world, that gap's like so huge that T can abuse that and get a ton of wins. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like T worked absolutely hard for that. T was down in the T was in the alleyway in Smash 4 getting robbed. You know what I'm
Oh,
saying?
yeah.
Oh,
Like
free. Yeah,
yeah,
he
like
had
T
enough, dude.
yeah, T
Yeah,
T definitely paid his dues in terms of that. So
he
now
did.
T is in the alleyway robbing people for matchup knowledge, but definitely earned it, right? Played the character since Smash 4. The character's actually pretty similar, but just like we said, got like extreme amount of buffs. So it's like, oh, you're just playing a better version of your character. Like sick. So T definitely one of the people that got rewarded for playing, one of the worst characters in Smash 4. And yeah, I think T just keeps that character, and for and when he runs into a player, it's like, oh dang, you like know the Pac-Man matchup, or you're playing really well against the Pac-Man matchup with like these swords and stuff like that. It's just time to bring out the Kazuya. It's time to go into the new era of Smash.
Fighter Pass 2, baby.
Yep.
Cannot stun them with the bell, stun them with the electric wind god fist.
Yeah,
Easy
he's always
peasy.
stunning, man. Always
Yeah.
Either
stunning.
way, man.
Yeah.
Hit him with the electrics, man. Yeah. Dude, it's too damn good. Yeah, I mean, personally, I still see Pac-Man pretty similar to where I saw the character before. I mean, yeah, time will only tell in terms of what we're talking about, right? With the swordies becoming more popular, more meta. One thing for this character always those I always see when you have a character where you have this many gimmicks and amongst those you have that many like different strategies and counter strategies there. I think you're always going to have a place, just because of just humanity. Like it's just always going to be so much that you can roll through that eventually gets to the point where it's like it's too much for any one person to have that sheer depth of knowledge, right? And that's really where T gets to kind of move forward and abuse a lot of these things. And as long as he can get into the base positions to make these things happen, which he can, and obviously part of it being the backbone is like the passive pressure that Ramsey was talking about as well, that the character is always going to have. You're always going to have this opportunity to kind of build up and dictate pace. So I think that's what's great for this character, and I think that's why this character can always thrive, for at least for T. I think for everyone else, it's going to be harder, obviously. I feel like the second and third place, like Pac-Men, to speak, I think they honestly, they play at a level where it almost feels like they're still playing Smash 4 in my eyes. When I see a lot of the other the Pac-Man, I don't think they take as advantage of a lot of the newer stuff that Pac-Man has. Especially with like on the melee side, because T is so like aggressive in that regard, right? He gets so much mileage out of these corner carries with fair. Even when he's like punishing people's recoveries, right? With hydrant, and not only with the water push, but like even just sometimes just doing it a direct hydrant, right, on people's recoveries if they go low, all those kind of things. And he's thinking about that. He's thinking in that kind of approach. And a lot of the people, when I see them play Pac-Man, they're not doing that. They're trying to stay away, play with the bonus fruit. Cool, I got the couple few buffs on my bonus fruit now from Smash 4. I'm gonna let that ride. Whereas I see a T using the entirety of the toolkit. So really proud of T to get this dub. Shout out to I'm gonna butcher it. I'm sorry, Ramses, right? But was it Odyssey, right? Odyssey. How did you say?
Go with it.
No, say it right now. Odyssey. Perfect. I want to make sure. I gotta make sure so I can say it right. So, but it's that event was absolutely phenomenal.
It was dope.
It was dope, man. Shout outs to the scene, man. Like shout out to France, like obviously for making it happen. But honestly, I am very, very happy. I know I was talking a little bit on Twitter, but I'm very, very happy that we're seeing more visibility on the European side. I think that tournament really showcased. If I had a vision of what Smash esports would look like in terms of like versus like traditional stuff, that was the closest thing I've seen in I would say ever. Right? Yeah, that immediately comes to my mind, and that was really a thing of beauty to see and witness. And honestly, that alone got me hyped. I'm like, damn, dude, can it actually happen? Was it all not just a dream?
Is it in the cards?
Yeah, is it in the cards, right? You know what I mean? And I think one of the big things I want to see is if you guys are watching this podcast and you do go to tournaments or you're interested in going to tournaments, like please start going, support, show some love. And definitely if you have the capacity, if you have the resources, go out to a tournament outside of NA, if you're just from NA, obviously. Like, go out there, please, see the world, see what everyone's doing. I know there's going to be, of course, tons of people who are watching who are not from NA, so shouts to you guys for holding down your scene and doing great things. But yes, for people who are North America, please go and support the scenes all around the world, man. There's a lot of people doing a lot of great work. Obviously, you got one of my favorite top players already in with us right now that I'm talking to, holding it down over there, time and time again.
Me speak English, bro. Me speak English.
But like honestly, man, it's something that we need to do more. To get to the next stage, we got to think global, and we got to understand that there's a lot of people doing things where, hey, we can do sick stuff. Like sick stuff is happening. It may not always need to be in the U.S., right? And that's okay. I know it's hard sometimes. You want to see the red, white, and blue everywhere, but sometimes it's just not like that, all right? And that's okay, because for overall, this is a benefit for the entirety of Smash, man. So I just want to shout out the squad there, Versal.gg, and all those guys for making that stuff happen, because it was definitely a treat to watch. And I think for someone being in the scene for a very long time and just the like greater esports for a while, it's beautiful to see those things come to pass for Smash. All right, I just want to see more of it. So But sorry, random tangent. But going back into it, yeah, T. I love this. I love what he's doing. I do hope that he continues to move forward with the cause, just in case. It's always nice to have a fighter pack too in your pocket, dude. Why not? Bring a gun to the alleyway. Why not? So I love it. Keep doing your thing, man. I love how he plays on a player level, and yeah, I just want to see more of it, man. We need that character diversity, and we need people to continue to push forward in some of these characters, man, and see really where the meta can take them.
Big shout outs. I just want to say this. The team that did L'Odyssée, I'm probably butchering it as well. They also do UFA, Ultimate Fight Arena, every year, which is a huge event with basically all fighting games, including Smash, where Leo was in 2019, where he lost to Space. If you guys remember, I don't know if you guys remember, but that was the last time we had Smash there. And this year, in I think 2 weeks, or no, I'm lying, in about a month.
In a month,
there's another UFA. So if you guys enjoyed the Invitational, then be sure to tune in next month.
The Damascus.
Yeah, shout outs, dude. He's holding it down.
He is.
Shout outs to Fauster and TPK too, two goats of the European scene. Love them. Either way, about Pac-Man, it's kind of like I said. I think the meta will be less and less kind to him, but the character will always have a place because you gotta be in like the upper echelon of players to even have a chance against a solid Pac-Man. And I think what Bam said is true, where like a lot of the Pac-Man, they just play him like a zoner, like a campy zoner, because they feel like that's all the character can do. I think the flip side is also true. There's a lot of Smash 4 kids or even Ultimate kids who are just like, you know what if I just play Pac-Man as if he's Ryu? Which also doesn't work. So really, like, honestly, I think the thing that makes T, like everyone has said so far, is his well-rounded nature, which is funny because Pac-Man is a ball, very well-rounded. But T really bringing that out. And I think if we want to see the character evolve, I think now that he's gotten to that like point where Pac-Man feels so complete, I want to see T making like the personal strides to really like level up the player versus player game as well, which I think has always been a bit of a thing for Japan, who try to like solve as many situations as possible, which does not leave a lot of room for humans. And I think as we see more like Japanese players attend international events like the French Invitational, which was like, half Japanese, as well as just, more and more American tournaments inviting Japanese players over, etc. We're seeing more and more of that player interaction, especially for a player like Ken, right? For Ken, we're seeing it more and more, but also Kameme. And I'm just hoping that other players like Zachary especially, but also Shuton, those type of players, I hope they start implementing that more and more as well, because I really feel like, if you compare the US to Japan, there's a lot that they can learn from each other in that sense. And Europe just, we just suck. But America often just a little like in my opinion, like too aggressive. Japan kind of like ignoring the part of like the capitalization on the player in a lot of situations. And I think the healthy middle ground is somewhere in between at the end of the day. And there are players from both scenes that are working towards the middle ground. I just like to see T be one of those players.
Bloom is a boss, though. So I wanted to just skim over real quick over the other bonus fruit, just because I don't think we went into detail on those. But basically, the idea is that the red fruits, the cherry and apple, are going to be the fastest ones. Melon, the green, is going to be the slowest, and then you got orange there for the medium speed. The thing about the non-reds, so for the reds, you generally need to anticipate them in order to avoid them, and they go at different angles. Cherry, you don't really care, but whenever T hits you with cherry, he's probably going to be very aggressive behind it. Apple is one of the more panic KO options. Like they'll use like jump apple, and they'll think, oh well, he just fared, I need to counter hit the fair, and so they'll just jump into the apple and get caught. You can use it for edge guards, things like that. You just gotta anticipate it. The orange is just straight up just a projectile that everyone can react to, but people don't because they don't expect it, because it's orange. It's the worst thing he has. The So it does set up at certain points, but something you need to understand is that pretty much every single item is going to be minus point blank on his block. So people tend to give him a little bit too much credit, tend to try and reset after he's done something minus on their block, things like that. Avoid trying to interact with him whenever he has key or the ship, whatever you want to call the ship, Gallia or Belt. If you avoid interacting with him for things like key, it's actually got quite a bit of startup, and it only KOs if you are at very high percent or if you are already in the corner off stage, things like that. So usually what you'll see is he'll try and set it up so that he can string into it, usually off of Hydrant or off of Fair String, whatever. He'll use it low percents. But half the time you'll see him use key. It's actually been one of the evolutions of his play. Is if you look at his play a few years ago, he used to favor round key, which was the Smash 4 tool of choice. And then what we've seen is he's gradually shifted toward using Bell as his kind of most powerful proactive thing to just kind of matchup check you, because it's the difference between living to 170 or 70. So Bell into Smash Attack is obviously one of his best closing options. But for the Melon, one of the issues is people either run into it, or if they see it, then they think, well, it's so slow, it's not going to hit me. I'm just going to ignore it, and then he'll just dash grab you and pull you into it. Or he will just try and attack behind it, use it like a pseudo hydrant pop. And he'll try and use it like a slow fireball and just move behind it. If you just use something like a retreating aerial or whatever and basically use a safe hitbox to attack the melon, then if he tries to move in with it or just behind it, then you'll essentially hit him for it. And then because you're pulling back, he can't really whiff punish you as easily. Things like that. So just some quick tips. There's obviously counters for this. Like you can always just wait, pause, go at a little bit different speed, and then whiff punish whatever you're swinging. Things like that. So it's not you do this every single time and it's always correct. It's a matter of these are some general counterplay that we don't see on a frequent
Rules
basis.
of engagement for sure.
Yeah. So, and also just to be clear on my opinion on T's Pac-Man, I think that T is like an RTS master of cheesy things that he can do. However, I also think that he has mastered his character more than possibly any other player on the planet. And so
Agree.
I do think T is a true master of his craft. I think that as a fighting game player, T has a lot of opportunity to improve that he doesn't have to use. Like Ramses said, people usually just lose when they sit down in the chair because the match is over before it started. Like the floor that you have to have mastered just to sit across from him at the table is higher than I would say almost any other player or character combination in the game. And so that's my opinion on T and Pac-Man. I don't think that Pac-Man is a great choice for most people. If you're already playing him, lean into the gimmicks. It's worked for T for a reason. It worked for him for years. People aren't going to solve it. It's fine. Even if few people do solve it, most people aren't, and you're going to get some consistency from that. So if you are playing Pac-Man, lean hard into it. Don't be afraid to use gimmicks. If people ask you how to counter it, go ahead and let them know. That's fine. But just understand, even if people know what's happening, there's so much they have to keep in mind that they're going to forget. So people lose track of what they're doing and make mistakes. And Pac-Man is very solid at being a powerful character when you're making mistakes and you're getting caught by a bell and dying at mid-percents. So that's my opinion of the character and the player.
All right, sick. Well, that's going to wrap it up for us. Make sure to let us know in the comments what you think about Pac-Man, how strong you think Pac-Man is, if you think Pac-Man's bad or good, and what you think about T's Pac-Man in particular. But that's going to be it from us. Until next time, class dismissed.